Voice leading is a music theory technique rooted in classical choral and orchestral arrangement. In a nutshell, it involves breaking chordal parts down into individual voices, then making each voice flow from chord to chord in a musically logical way. In, say, a string quartet, each of the four players has his own individual part that, when blended together, combine to make a continuously evolving harmony. Voice leading doesn't have to be limited to just string arrangements though. It can also make a big difference when making piano-based chord progressions and pad parts sound smoother and more professional. So the first step towards using good voice leading to smooth out your pad parts is to make each chord contain the same number of notes, corresponding to the number of players in your virtual ensemble. This way, as we go from chord to chord, we can think of each note as belonging to one voice throughout. Let's put this idea into practice. Here's a MIDI part playing a 4-chord progression: C major, A minor, F major, E minor. But all the chords are played in root position. This means that the root note of each triad is at the bottom of the stack, that is, the lowest pitch note. This results in a disjointed sound, as we're jumping all over the keyboard following the root note of each new chord and stacking the chord tones upwards from there. Starting with the C major chord, we know we have 4 voices to use to build this chord. However, each triad only contains 3 distinct notes, so we can use the 4th lowest voice to play the root note of each chord in the bass register. What we have here, C, E, G, C, is known as a closed voicing, since all of the notes fit inside one octave with no real space in between them. Triads like this nearly always sound better played with open voicings, with the notes spread out over more than one octave and a decent amount of space in between. Let's use what's called a drop 2-4 voicing. Taking our closed voicing, we number the notes down from the top 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we take notes 2 and 4 and drop these down 1 octave. This takes us from C, E, G, C to C, G, E, C. So, where to next? This is where voice leading comes into play. Good voice leading practice usually looks for the smallest movement possible pitchwise between the voices within the chords. So, if each note in our first chord is to be thought of as an individual player, what note could they each move to in the next bar to generate A minor, the second chord in our progression? The chord tones of A minor are A, C, and E. So our current top note of C has a few possible choices here. It could go from C up 2 whole tones to E, down 3 semitones to A, or it could stay where it is on C to provide the third of the A minor chord. This works pretty well if we're looking for as little movement between notes in each chord as possible, so we'll keep this at C. The next note down in our C major open voicing is E. We could shift this to A, but that's a huge upward jump of 5 semitones, not ideal. There's also the option of dropping it down 4 semitones to C. But since E is already in the chord of A minor, this note can stay put as well to make up the 5th of our A minor chord. The next note down, G, could either go up a tone to A or down 3 semitones to E. We'll send it to A. As it's not only a smaller movement, it's also the root note of the chord we're moving to. We already have the third, C, and the fifth, E, so the addition of this A as the root note means that our A minor triad is now complete. Our lowest note, the bass C note, can shift down 3 semitones to the root of the chord A. And this works fine because we're using the lowest of our 4 voices to reinforce the root note of each chord, acting as a kind of built-in bass part. So now we move on to chord 3, the F major chord. The chord tones of an F major triad are F, A, and C. So, going from the top down once more, our top C can stay where it is to provide the fifth of the F major triad. While the next note down, E, can shift a smooth single semitone up to the root note of the chord, F. The third note down from the top, A, can stay put, since it counts as the third of the F major chord. While the lowest note, being the bass note, has our permission to move the greatest distance pitchwise down a whopping 4 semitones from A to the root note of F. For the final E minor chord, the chord tones of which are E, G, and B, our top note, C, can drop a semitone to B, while the second note down from the top, F, could move up a whole tone to G to form the third of the E minor chord. The third note down can go up a whole tone from A to B, or the bass note can follow the example of the top note and drop down a semitone from F to E. With all 4 chords now voiced, we can use the colours to visually trace the individual melodic lines taken by each voice in the part, revealing perfect, smooth voice leading.